these positions because of our technology improvements in our case management system, where we just don't need as many clerical related positions in our office, and also making benefit of 311 and making the most use of that that we can. Body cameras, we're going to have to see how that goes and figure out what resources we need. I was just at a CJCC meeting this morning where the county was discussing it and additional staffing needs, et cetera. I think the first case we charged after the rollout of body cams involved an assault on a police force during bar close, and we had at least 9 different officers who had videotaped the incident. So to the extent that prosecutors need to review those to prepare for the many thousands of cases we handle, that's a very time-consuming task. So we're just going to have to see how that goes, but we are going to be adding some paralegal help to assist us with that. Sample of measures. Here is.
I'm sorry, Ms. Siegel, before we get into that
yes.
exciting slide on conviction rate on domestic violence, Councilmember Palmisano had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Siegel, behind this one, the other slides on domestic violence and the new family navigator role in the pilot, is that to assist specifically with the incident that the officers were called out for? Because I know often in domestic violence calls, police see any number of things on that call, and there are other issues at hand, like no food in the house, for example. And is that something that we do today with the follow-ups in these hotspot areas, or is that something for the family navigator role in the future?
Well, Mr. Chair and Councilmember Palmisano, that's an excellent question, because this is going to lead into something else I'm going to bring to your attention. This Hotspots pilot is focused on 911 calls coded as domestic violence, but where no police report has been filed. So there's not a criminal case. The people do not want a criminal case. Initially, one thing we wanted to figure out was, is this appropriate that there's no police report? Are things being ignored that really should be brought, forward as a potential criminal case? We've concluded no, but police are being called to help. And so it's in these cases that are not criminal cases, but where the families need assistance, that this Hotspots pilot is focused on. And the thought is to connect proactively somebody with knowledge of county social services, a person following up with these families in real time when possible, or at least making a phone call or a house visit after, to see what's needed. Because these are families that need something, because they're repeated calls to 911. And so that's really focused on that area. Now, in domestic violence cases, we have advocates paired with the investigators down in the family violence unit of the Minneapolis Police Department. They make calls to the victims shortly after an assault, the 911 call after we become aware of the case. We also provide 24-hour hotline services, so the responding police officers immediately can put the victims in touch with domestic violence advocacy services. Now, we do have a challenge moving forward into 2017, however, because we just found out yesterday, as a matter of fact, that we did not receive another federal Violence Against Women Act grant. And one thing that the grant the most recent grant we received funded was these advocacy positions in the family violence unit. So we'll have to work with the police department and perhaps figure out a way, because we do think it's really important to provide those advocacy services, and that's going to be a challenge. We've made, with this VAWA grant, we've made real significant progress on what are called gone on arrival cases, where the alleged batterer offender is not present when the police respond. That can be a very dangerous time. With increasing the rates of cases being charged and reducing the time from offense to case resolution, we believe that the police department will be able to find resources to continue the additional investigation help at the Domestic Abuse Service Center to help us keep progress, sustain the progress we've made in that area. But it's, it's the problem with grants, is it's 2 steps forward and then scramble. And I will say we've been incredibly successful obtaining federal violence against women act grants. We've got numerous, I think there's only once or twice in my 8 years as city attorney that we have not been awarded that. There are many jurisdictions who beg, plead, and don't receive them, I think, because we do great work. We've got great partners. I've got amazing people, in Michelle Jacobson, our domestic violence team manager, and all of our staff in the criminal division, and great partners in the Minneapolis Police Department.
Thank you. Your results show it for sure.
And then just quickly, a couple of other measures. This trials to verdict, we've increased the number of trials over time, and through a lot of conscious work and effort, improved our conviction rate. And it's healthy for the system, for us, to have to put our foot to the floor and try some cases. It's good for everybody in the criminal justice system. Driving under the influence cases continue to be important to us. We monitor the level of enforcement that has gone down a bit in 2015. We'll keep an eye on that. We maintain a really high conviction rate in this area, even though with all the private defense lawyers who spend a lot of time thinking up new theories for trying to get around these cases, we've been very effective and one step ahead of their latest tactics. Civil division, which always tends to get ignored in these kinds of presentations, is divided into civil litigation and our client services team. They continue to do amazing work day in and day out. And in civil litigation, we have a 93% win rate in cases resolved in court. Something, it's pretty darn good, I would say. And then approximately 50% of the cases we resolve in court, and approximately 50% we settle. It's an important number for us to track, just to make sure we're not just giving away money and being too easy on settlements, and that we can maintain reasonable resolutions on behalf of the city in these cases. Any questions?
Well, in the civil litigation area, what's the budget impact? It doesn't look like there's anything.
What's the what impact?
Any new requests or anything?
No. Civil division, we're just, whatever the formula for the self-insurance fund, we have not asked for anything different. We are repurposing some positions in the civil division, but we should be adequately staffed.
Self-insurance fund represents all that non-general fund items within the budget framework. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Siegel, on the presentation, all the great work of the department. I just had a general question on the budget. I noticed what jumped out to me was a 14.1% increase in salaries and wages, even though the FTE count is staying the same, and I was just wondering if there was an explanation for that.
I mean, they're almost all union positions, so it's whatever the contract requires.
Ms. Green?
Councilmember Johnson, the reason why the increase is gone up a little bit higher than the rest of the department is a portion of her The $200,000 reduction that took place in 2016 was added back into those line items in 2017.
So just
So it was a couple positions. Last year, what the department decided to do was not take that reduction. So that's why you still see the positions, not eliminate the positions. And this year, the mayor has reinstated the reduction that took place in 2016.
okay, so it was money taken out, but the positions stayed. And
The position count stayed. The dollars were
Position
removed.
count
Yes. No
stayed. So-
dollars were associated with the positions that were with the positions.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
So there was just sort of a placeholder that experienced the budget change in 16, and now it's being reinstated in the 17 budget. Is that correct?
That's an accurate statement.
Okay. And were there any reclassifications because you've repositioned some of the current FTEs?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we've had some reclassifications, but probably, relatively insignificant in terms of the budget. With that $200,000 reduction, we have used basically our fringe benefit line to subsidize that reduction this year. And so, with the fringe benefit line, that's not the right way to do it. The right way to do it is to have adequate salary in your salary line and not to have excess in your fringe benefit line. And so that's, I don't know if I accurately represented that, Ms. Green, but
And
that's
Bill-
how we managed to make it, how we are managing to make it through this year.
Thank you. And building upon Councilmember Johnson's question a little bit, are there a fixed set of vacant positions right now versus what's in the budget? Are we looking to fill positions that are empty, or you know what I'm trying to understand?
Mm-hmm. The
Staffing levels.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the criminal division, the general fund, all positions are filled. They're all filled.
Okay.
And then we also, something else that may impact it a bit is we've got this 2-year pilot for this charging team, which is two one-time. So we have 2 FTEs that are in fact temporary through 2017.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Siegel, and thank you, Tony, for that explanation. I do notice the $200,000 accounts for close to about 5% of that, but that would still have salaries and wages going up roughly around 10%, which seems, which is unusual compared to the other departments. So I'm not saying that's something that I disagree with. I just like more information on. So maybe we could talk offline and just I understand if there's union contracts were renegotiated, salaries renegotiated, or I guess just better understanding that would be appreciated. And so we can chat offline about that. But I just wanted to ask that we have that follow up. So thank you.
Mr. Chair and Councilmember Johnson, absolutely, we will do that. But I can assure you, and my staff would certainly be happy to assure you that nobody is getting a 10% increase. I mean, I think they're in our contract, it's like 2.5%, something like that. So I don't want people to think that, the fat cats in the attorney's office. I mean, we hire lateral attorneys who take substantial pay cuts just for the opportunity to work for the city because we are so good and such a great place to work.
It's a great law firm.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Councilmember Palmisano. That was left over. Thank you very much, Mr. Siegel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee.
Appreciate the attempt to keep on time or catch up at least. Mr. Todd, you're the recipient of people eating up some extra time, so we appreciate your presence here.
Thank you.
Give you any opportunity you need to make those slide transitions. Please don't steal the zip drive from the attorney's office.
She's a tough act to
Yeah.
follow, trust me.
Whenever you're ready, Mr. Todd.
Thank you. Give me just a moment here. Get my notes together. Perfect. I'm ready to go. So, good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Patrick Todd from the Minneapolis Assessing Department. It's a pleasure to be here to present our 2017 budget proposal. With me today, I'd just like to introduce, we have the director of the department, Rebecca Malmquist. I also have two of the residential supervisors, Denise Lingwall and Saray Garnett-Huhuli, as well as we have Matt Sandell, who is our IT and manager of assessment services. He does a lot of the number crunching and the CAMA work within the city of Minneapolis, as well as I have Paige Moody, who was a step-up intern in our office, and she was doing a phenomenal job on some of the projects that we had picked. And so we ended up offering her an internship until the projects that we had identified for her are complete. So with that, I think we can begin. So the very first slide we are presenting here would be the organizational chart. The organizational chart hasn't changed in a number of years. It for sure didn't change between last year and this year, and I'm not sure if there's much need to discuss that. It is done by organizational projects or sections within our department. It's not a pretty typical, it's an atypical actually organizational chart, but if you have any questions, we can discuss that offline. Under the budget summary, the general fund for 2016 was $5,027,275. The recommended budget was $5,266,649. We've asked for an additional FTE in our department. In addition to that, we're asking for additional education and training and licensing dollars. In addition to that, we do have a capital campaign request as well. The core programs within the Minneapolis Assessing Department. The Minneapolis Assessing Department, our purpose is to value and classify all the real estate within the city of Minneapolis each year. We do that by looking at or inspecting each property. We have 130,000 properties within the city of Minneapolis. This year, our residential staff, we're just wrapping up our equalization in the summer. We've seen or we've door knocked about 19,000 properties so far this summer. We have about 3,000 left to do. It's quite an accomplishment. I'm sure as council members, you do door knock when it comes to election time, and 19,000 is an outstanding number of houses to hit. So, but as part of what we do in the city of Minneapolis, we do property inspections, we do the exemptions, as well as any property tax relief programs, which is blind and disabled. It's homesteads, it's veterans exclusions, it's the exemptions. We have the probably the most complete and most accurate data as far as data information and property records in the city of Minneapolis. The CPAD and reg services, police, fire, all rely upon a lot of the information that we store in our property records system. We do property tax or taxpayer notification, taxpayers appeals, tax court, as well as neighborhood and business relations. And we do that all with a smile on our face. So to talk a little bit about the first request, which is a lead appraiser position. This position will handle all the exemptions within the city of Minneapolis. That is 7,300 parcels, around $12 billion in exempted value. This person will be the single point of contact. So when anyone has a question or has any issues with exemptions, they would have one person to call. This individual will handle the customer service of the department. We currently have a front lobby as a front counter where we handle walk-in business. This position, we don't really have somebody managing this position at all. At this point in time, we also have 3 clerical staff or support staff, I should say, that handle the walk-ins, to handle the phone calls, and are doing work with the general public. This person would manage the workload as well as the outcomes of the classification staff. That'd also be the first point of contact for 311. In addition to those 2 items, they would handle all the personal property and railroad accounts within the city of Minneapolis. In addition to that, they do the community engagement and community outreach. This is something that's new. It's something that I think is it's something that we probably need to elevate to a position, and that's where we do quite a bit of a tax exempt and nonprofit work for the city of Minneapolis as far as getting the communication out, but we probably don't do a good job getting that information out to underserved communities or communities of color. I think if we made a special effort to make sure that the information is at least accessible, or if not, being even more proactive and going into the communities and talking about programs that are out there, we might find that there's a number of organizations that are doing good work but don't realize or don't know how to apply for tax exemption. And this person would be responsible for that. These 4 areas at one point had been handled by various people within the office. Over the years, when we've taken budget cuts, we would basically take those positions and parse them out. Generally, for the most part, the people that have been doing this work has been my leadership team. I've handled all the exemption within the city of Minneapolis. My director, Rebecca, is doing all the customer service for the city of Minneapolis for the lobby and the support that's up front. Matt Sandell in the back is doing the personal property accounts and the railroads. Again, these are positions that, or these were tasks within our office that had been, we had specialists back then, and again, as those positions were lost, we just took them and assigned them to the person that was probably most knowledgeable in the area, not necessarily the best place for a position. But now I think if we can bring them back and put them under one individual, we can really do the city a service, because we can have one point of contact. We can make sure that the information is being handled correctly. It's especially with exemptions. We do a reassessment of exemptions every 3 years and every 6 years. We're finding we're just finishing up that process. There's a number of exemptions that as exempt organizations, as the funding doesn't become available and they have to close their door, they're not generally calling the assessor's office and say, oh, by the way, we're done. We don't have the funding. So some of these buildings can sit empty and still be not on the tax rolls. And we need to do a better job of following up on not only just reading the newspaper and keeping up on media, but being aware of what's going on in the market, so that as buildings turn over, we can be there to make sure that that these properties are returned back to the tax rolls as at the most appropriate time. And that also takes into consideration when I was out there taking a look at these properties, is that exempt organizations also are oftentimes start because they've got funding, and the funding changes or dries up for them. And then they find other funding for other purposes, which might be very worthwhile or worthy. Unfortunately, exemptions are for a very specific purpose. And so when an exempt organization, let's say, is helping a nonprofit, and that funding dries up, they find another purpose to help, maybe say low-income affordable housing. That's a completely different use. They would have to really reapply. They'd have to take a look at the income. We'd have to take a look at who's donating to the organizations, making sure the missions and the vision of the organization are within the parameters of the statute. So long and short, I'll keep this sweet because I know we're running out of time. By funding the lead appraiser position, the city leadership will be providing more opportunity for residents to access property tax programs. The city leadership will be providing more opportunities for engagement and value with the valued, charitable, and supportive organizations in the community. And finally, the position will also build public trust by delivering services and information to underserved communities and communities of color where none have existed before. Next slide would be the education. We're requesting $100,000 in education. Back in 2013, the legislature changed the minimum requirements, or the qualifications for assessors. All the assessors are now required to have what's called an AMA certification or accreditation. Back when the legislature did that, only about 16% of my staff met those qualifications. Since then, we've put in a plan to get everybody through the appropriate education and training. We've got a model set up for the most part. We've got people dedicated to parse out time within their work schedule to dedicate to the education and training and writing of the appraisals. I'm happy to say so far we've moved from 16 to 30%, which might not sound like a significant movement, but we absolutely think that's a huge success. We are on track to be 100% compliant with the legislature by July of 18, which is about 12 months earlier than we need to be. Some of the challenge we have is that in getting people through this AMA certification, the more experienced people, the people that have come in or have been working in the office, have a number of the courses that they've taken, or that are required, I should say. So we don't have to pay to have those classes taken. There are people that are coming into the assessor's office that have degrees from St. Cloud University that are real estate degrees. A lot of those classes transfer over, so we don't have to spend a lot of dollars on that. But when we're hiring people that don't have much of a real estate background or are coming from the real estate sales, we have to spend a significant amount of money, up to about $7,500 of training and education to get them to the AMA certification. So let's see.
Mr. Todd?
Yes.
We can continue. Councilmember Palmason.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Todd, could you help expand our understanding of what exempt parcels are? I typically think of them as churches, but I don't think there's 7,300 of them in our city.
Sure.
And is it largely based on state law?
I'm sorry, what was that?
And is the exemption largely based on state law?
Yes, absolutely. Through the chair, Councilmember Palmisano. The exemptions are, there's one class called nonprofit. They have a completely different application. They have a very separate, they have a very unique set of qualifications that they have to meet. Oftentimes they're referred to as the North Star factors. That's, if you're going to be a nonprofit, you need to go through that track. The other ones are, for the most part, I would call they were statutory exemptions. If you're a school, if you're a church, if you're a cemetery, if you're a hospital, if you're a library, if you're, I think there's one more. It is what it is. So if you're a hospital, one, you're for the most part exempt. If you're a school, as long as you're a legitimate school, you're exempt. Whereas nonprofits, you can be a nonprofit, but you might not qualify for property tax exemption. A lot of it is dependent upon how you function, who you're serving, and if you have fundraising or are supported by charity. Those are a lot of the criteria that are used. But so I would say there's two tracks. One that are, I would say, statutorily exempt because it's pretty clear cut. The other one is really dependent on their mission and the funding.
Mm-hmm. And then also, if I may, a couple of slides back, it also refers to personal property.
Personal
and I don't
property account, sure.
understand, because that to me would be any single family homeowner or private business owner.
Sure. Through the chair, Councilmember Palmisano. Personal property, and I wish there was a better term, but in our industry, that's what it's called. It's oftentimes referred to as a personal property. Most of the houses and most of the real estate on Nicollet Island are on what's called a personal property account because the park board owns the land. And usually how taxes function, if you don't pay your taxes, the city or the county will take your land. They take the land, and if you have a building on it, they get the building as well, but they take the land. Well, in a case where you have an exempt organization like the park board, you can never take the land because the park board already owns it. It's exempt. So they put it on a personal property account, which is technically a lien against the owner of the improvements. And that's why they call it a personal property account, because it's just handled differently like a personal property. We also handle it, let's say, for park board land where the sea salt, they're on tax exempt land, but it's a for-profit organization. We put them on a personal property account so that every year they get levied a tax. If they don't pay it, it's a lien against sea salt. It's not a lien against the property. And again, if you own the land, it's a lien against the property. In a personal property account, it's a lien against the individual or the company.
I see.
Does that help?
Very much so. Thanks.
Yeah, I've never heard that. Thanks for that question.
Yep.
For enlightening.
And the Paradise Charter was the other one that we had a difficult time with. I don't know if you know who they are or not, but again, it's the park board. They own a dock. They lease to a charter system for a number of dollars, and we said we have a personal property, and they had a difficult time understanding why it would be called a personal property, but it's just on how you collect the taxes. Let's see. So to get back, so we have the change in the law where we have a plan in place to get people accredited. We have, again, coaching and mentoring. We're doing a pretty good job up to this point in time. I think to support this request of the $100,000, we do have ongoing education. In addition to once they become AMA certified, we have to additionally invest in the employees and as an ongoing expense. But just to kind of loop it back, but to a city values, investing in the staff training and development is in alignment with the city values by encouraging staff to be professional, or by encouraging professional development and resulting in knowledgeable, creativity, and innovative staff and employees. Workforce development training programs are a valuable tool in engaging and motivating staff. Real estate and assessing training courses not only bring fresh skills to the department, but also help generate new ideas and innovative solutions to problems while inspiring staff to achieve more. So if we go to the next slide, we'll talk about our performance goals. The city has, or the assessor's office has 5 performance goals. I'm not going to touch on all of them. I think I've covered some of them already. We've talked a little bit about high-performing and engaging employees. We've had people going through the designation program. And one thing I didn't really mention is that the education and training and the work they put into it has to be over and above their existing workload. We're not removing the amount of work that they do off their plate so they can do the training and education. They're expected to do the same amount of work in addition to do the education and training. And so oftentimes, we are giving them time away to attend classes. But again, the workload still stays on their desk. For studying, for many of them studying, they're spending time at home and studying and preparing for these tests, writing this appraisal. So it's a real, I'm very proud of my staff, and it's a lot of work, but we're getting there. We also have 75% of the staff. Most of my staff downtown Minneapolis in the Central Business District have an MAI designation. I'm very proud of that. We're one of the few assessing jurisdictions that have an MAI. Again, they've done that. Much of it has been on their own. And why that's important is when we've gone against large organizations in tax court, the appraisers they're putting up in the witness stand is an MAI. And if we're not at least on the same level of education, training, and accreditation, we seem to be starting way back in the pack, at least with the judge. Right now, when we put up our best up there, their MAIs, they're putting up their best. They are also an MAI. We think it's paying off in tax court as well. Cross-departmental, I'm going to just jump to 4 and 5. Cross-departmental, we're working with communications as well as NCR. We're doing a better job trying to reach out to, we have about 10 to 13,000 properties we think that very well should be getting a homestead, but for whatever reason they don't. So this is one of the projects the Step Up or Paige, our intern at this point, has been working on with communications is we're going to be mailing out these postcards to people telling them, hey, did you realize that you could be having a tax reduction or some money back on your taxes if you homestead? So we'll be mailing this out because generally speaking, when people buy a house, it's somewhat incumbent upon them to either have the realtor tell them or the closer or somebody tell them. We really don't have much of an outreach. This will change that significantly. So we're doing it in English and to see what kind of feedback, but we've also, the page has also spent time identifying areas of concentration where we might have a high population of Latinos or Somalis, and we're having these translated, and we'll be mailing them out in areas where we think that there could be a payoff, or there could be maybe because of a language barrier, a problem by even, by sending this. It doesn't help if they don't understand it. So we've been working with Communications NCR to identify the locations, to translate it, and get it out in the mail. So that's a huge success. We've also, within the last, I'd say 30 days, we did 2 programs on La Raza Radio. Talking about what the assessor's office does, about the property tax relief programs, and we found that to be awfully fun, as well as we got people to call. Our people were calling into the radio station with questions, and that continued after my appraiser came back. He got many, many, many phone calls from people saying, hey, I heard you on the radio, and I asked this question. So that was huge. And then last but not least, we're working on brainstorming so we could get information to the council members so you can get things out into your either blogs or web pages or your electronic notifications to your constituents. Last but not least, I'll talk about CARS. Our CARS request. So we have a request in for $1 million for a new property records and CAMA system. About a year ago, the Permanent Review Committee, the PRC, looked at our contract and said, you installed that system in 2000 and we've never been out for an RFP. We've never looked at the contract since. To be in defense of the company we've been using, we've been very satisfied with the work. They've been very prompt. It's been reasonably affordable. But at this point in time, we're actually required to go out for an RFP. The point where we're at right now, and actually, could we go to the next slide? Because I just think it's a more interesting slide. At this point in time, we're 2 versions behind. Once we were told that we need to go out for our RFP, we've spent time looking at other vendors and the technology they're currently using. Our existing vendor doesn't offer that, and even if we were to spend $250,000 to upgrade to their next .net, it's basically taking what we have today and just putting it on a different platform. It's really not providing us the tools. It's not providing us the GIS integration, the photo integration, the mapping, and all the great technology and the tools that are currently available in other systems are not even available in our current system. And I think when we're talking about the millennial generation and people really wanting to have a front-facing system, that's exactly what we're going to have to take a look at, because The system we have now doesn't even have the capabilities and doesn't, in our mind, in the future, doesn't even have the future capabilities of the system that we think is appropriate for an assessor's office of a city of the first class. So with that, we knew we were going to have to go out for RFP, whether it's funded or not. We have to do this. We have pulled together an IT staff. We have a BA and a project manager. We do have an assessor staff identified for this RFP project. We're looking at system requirements, best practices. And one thing, I've been in this industry long enough, anytime you go through an RFP process and you do take a look at what are your current needs, what do you think your future needs are, you find opportunities for efficiencies. And that's probably one of the biggest benefits of doing an RFP, is that you get to step back, take a look and go, why are we doing this? Why aren't we doing this? And who handles it? And sometimes some of what we're asking as lead appraiser was coming up because of that. Some things are being done because out of desperation, you just put it in somebody's bucket list and have them do it. Now we're stepping back. We're making sure that we're doing things correctly, because when you're going with a whole new system, you don't want to build in the deficiencies or the obsolescence into the new system if you don't have to. So lastly, in 2017, we'll have the RFP proposed, put out there. We will evaluate. We'll do demos in 2017, and in 2018, we're budgeting and planning for an implementation of a new CAMA system. And last but not least, this is not a system that just benefits the city of Minneapolis. The data that we store is used by police, fire, reg services, CPAD, 311, 911. So it is a system that would probably touch a lot more departments. Obviously, we would benefit the most, but we are very much the source for real estate data for many of the other departments as well. And I think that the tools that some of these other vendors have out there will probably allow them to have access to more and better information as well. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Well, that you're right. That last slide was very informative, and I appreciate that. I've been watching this for the last couple of years, as you know. And in your role as the chair of the statewide association, I imagine this is something that's coming up in other municipalities, whether it's county or cities across the state. Are we looking to build some best of class or some comparative data on how other people are doing this? We've used a 15-year-old system, and it's not going to be supported in the near future, but where are we at with looking at what other cities are doing?
Mr. Chair, they oftentimes refer to the cutting edge as the bleeding edge, and we're fortunate back in 2000 when we rolled out Govern, we were absolutely the cutting edge system. Other people were either didn't have computers or, were still doing things on paper or doing things in Excel. We rolled it out and we were one of the best. Today, I can say that Hennepin County's spent almost $12 million to put in a CAMA system and a tax system. Now, we don't have to worry about the tax system component and a record system. But they're rolling it out hopefully in 2017. Scott County is also working on a new system. Dakota County just rolled out their new system and has been up and running with a vendor they're extremely happy with. Anoka County has picked a vendor and are working through the requirements. So I think we're in the best position because we're able to learn from a lot of other cities who have done it and have said this worked and this didn't work, or what they promised us, this is what was delivered, and we would do it a little bit differently. So I would say that we're probably in the best position because currently Hennepin County literally is rolling it out next year, and they've got 6 years into the development. So there might be an opportunity to partner with Hennepin County. We'll absolutely look at that, but we also want to take a look at the other options as well.
Very good. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate your presentation. I don't see any other questions. The professionalism and quality of work that you guys are exhibiting every day is much appreciated, but often overlooked. So
thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Mr. Todd. That concludes our series of budget presentations for this morning. The next time we'll be meeting on this topic will be on October 6th, and that's the morning will be devoted to the Public Works budget, and then the afternoon will be beginning at 1:30. We're beginning the Community Planning and Economic Development Department, as well as Regulatory Services Department budget presentations. So with that, our meeting today is adjourned.